Greetings and salutations, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about New York politics. And as you know, whenever we talk about New York politics, we need to acknowledge the great one. The great one, the saint one, Andrew Cuomo, with my Saint Andrew Cuomo candle. Let's give this a light up because we need to talk about this. Ow, 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 ow. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Lit it up the first time this time. Pretty impressive. So let's have that up here right in front of you guys, right here and now, because even though this is Governor Cuomo, we're going to be talking about the New York City mayoral race, and absolutely no way was I buying a candle for Mayor Bill de Blasio. Even the joke and the meme can't go that far. But with that being said, I do want to point out, before we get into this video, that I basically put my whole retirement into these Andrew Cuomo and Lord Fauci candles, and I'm feeling a little bit like that wasn't the best decision now looking at it in the modern times. But if you're worried about your retirement, let's hear from our sponsor, Noble Gold! Inflation isn't something that we've heard about for a long time in this country. Yet last month, the inflation rate in the United States of America reached its highest point in 29 years. That's a huge problem for us in terms of buying food or gasoline, etc. However, it's an even bigger problem if you're planning on retiring anytime soon. Right now, you need to put up an inflation dam in order to preserve the value of your savings and your investments. But it's not too late. Noble Gold actually specializes in retirement plans and IRAs. So their team of experts should be your first stop because they make it so easy to put together that inflation dam. And for this month, anybody who opens up a 401k or an IRA with Noble Gold, you will be gifted an American Eagle 1-ounce silver coin. Call them about this month's offer of a 1-ounce American Eagle pure silver proof coin with an IRA at 877-646-5347. Again, that's 877-646-5347. I feel like I am not getting smoother in transitioning to the sponsors, but honestly, that is neither here nor there. Or as the professionals like to say, that is neither nya nor... You know what? Not even going to say the second part. You write the second part down in the comments of this video. Because today what we got to talk about is incredibly important. And of course, I'm talking about the results of the New York City mayoral race, which now the Democratic primary has been concluded, and Eric Adams has been chosen as the representative of the Democratic Party. And I think this is incredibly important as a story because I have been talking about how New York City is different from other major cities that lean heavily Democrat for a number of reasons, and I think Eric Adams' choice among the Democrats is proof positive of that hypothesis. But first, we gotta go into the candidates so that you guys can understand what exactly I'm talking about, because Eric Adams is not your typical Democrat, or at least he didn't run a campaign like your typical Democrat.
You don't have to worry about danger when you have private security on your block. I don't and never will allow stop and frisk to be returned and abuse people. I know real solution for real people in New York is you have private security. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Eric Adams, throughout the entire Democratic primary process, was the only candidate to run consistently and unflinchingly on a tough-on-crime policy. Adams said that he would bring back the anti-crime unit. This is the unit that should be named the anti-shooting unit, as it had undercover NYPD officers going out to shooting hotspots in order to deter the carrying of illegal guns. Bill de Blasio very famously removed this unit and shootings exploded. Now, the justification that Mayor Bill de Blasio used for getting rid of this unit is that the anti-crime unit, the unit that is laser focused on shootings and illegal guns, was far more disproportionately likely to engage in shootings with suspects. Now, this is obvious to anybody who's not a complete and utter idiot that the unit that focuses on illegal guns and shootings is more likely to encounter people with guns, therefore is more likely to shoot those people who are carrying illegal guns. But for Bill de Blasio, just like the regressives that we see across the country, there was a gap. Bill filled it with racism. He got rid of this unit. And of course, shootings exploded in New York City. We actually hit 1990s levels of shooting in this city after the removal of this unit. and Bill de Blasio's reallocation, aka the defunding of the NYPD. Now, the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams, actually backed not only restoring this unit, which is common sense, and you'd have to be an absolute idiot to oppose it, but he backed bringing back a version of stop and frisk because he believed that it worked, and it wasn't in fact racist, or at least his implementation of it would not have the same hangups and problems that Mayor Michael Bloomberg's implementation of stop and frisk would have. Now, of course, speaking anywhere near close to the truth or even adjacent to it in New York City is going to win you the scorn of progressive activists and the mainstream media and the lefty media within the city. So, of course, Eric Adams, after doing all of this, had no chance. I mean, he was even endorsed, a Democrat running for mayor in the Democratic primary, by Tucker Carlson of all people, so he was obviously done. Well, we'll get into that hypothesis and how it played out a little bit later in this video, but I want to go over some of the other candidates. And of course, I have to start with Andrew Yang because he's the internet's favorite candidate, and he may have run the worst campaign I've ever seen in my entire life as somebody who started off as the front runner humanly possible. Andrew Yang, complete and utter failure through and through throughout this process. He took every side of every issue. He was trying to push his UBI thing above all things, and I get it. Andrew Yang cares about UBI more than any of the other issues, but at some points, he's in favor of defunding the police, and some points he's in favor of more funding for the police. He wants the Asian task force, but he doesn't want this or that. It's absolutely crazy, and him being all over the place, even though he started out with the most amount of name recognition and as the frontrunner, made his candidacy tank, and this is why Andrew Yang finished fourth and dropped out immediately in the ranked choice voting system. There was also Catherine Garcia, who of course was the Democratic bigwig who was running in this race. Garcia was like the former head of the Sanitation Workers Union or Sanitation Secretary, one or the other, it doesn't matter. Highly corrupt Democratic Party boss through and through. This was this candidate. And she got a lot of support later in the primary process, but again, she had a lot of ground to cover. And then there was Maya Wiley. Maya Wiley, the choice of progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So important that we come together as a movement and rank Maya #1. We cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. We can't afford to not engage because of what could have been. We engage in the world that we have, and we do everything we can to make that world better. We have a choice to make New York City better. We have a choice that is clearly better than privatizing our school system and allowing housing to be built only for the wealthiest people. We have an option of a candidate who can center people, racial justice, economic justice, and climate justice. That didn't just come up to run for mayor, but has experience and has a lifetime of dedication to this. And that candidate is Maya Wiley.
Now, of course, Maya Wiley was the absolute worst choice. This woman's only qualification in relation to politics was that she was a council person for Bill de Blasio. So she's cut from the same cloth as Bill de Blasio. She's done nothing in her career, and part of her campaign was telling people to only rank women, which is a good strategy for her because there weren't that many women on the ballot, and in the ranked choice voting system, if you left slots blank, you had a greater chance of not losing your support. Wiley, absolute disaster. Ocasio-Cortez's endorsement should be treated by people as an anti-endorsement, as an endorsement from any communist figure in government should be. And her policies reflected that, the way she spoke reflected that, and she was major on the train of defunding the police and calling everything racist. She actually called Eric Adams, the black dude who runs ads about how he was the victim of police brutality before joining the NYPD, a racist for wanting to come against crime.
So my godson, who is 6'3", 6'3" tall, black and beautiful. I've had to accompany him to court for riding his skateboard while black. I've had to accompany him to court for sitting in a park while black. And the worst idea I've ever heard is bringing back stop and frisk and the anti-crime unit from Eric Adams, which 1 is racist, 2 is unconstitutional, and 3 didn't stop any crime, and 4, it will not happen in a Maya Wiley administration.
So these are your candidates. Now, were there more candidates? Yes. Were they as clowny, if not more clowny, as the candidates that I put forward? Absolutely yes. But these were the main ones, and we don't have the time to go through the full clown show of Democratic candidates. But this was the test, and I have been talking about this with multiple different people in relation to New York City, about how New York is different, because in other cities, people who have money can move away from the city centers and kind of leave them to fester and crime to explode, and this is how you have generation after generation electing non-stop Democratic mayors. However, New York is different because New Yorkers of all different socioeconomic statuses tend to all ride the subway. So if there's problems with homeless people, with crime, etc., it's actually difficult to avoid for rich people in this city as compared to any other city across the United States of America, because most cities in this country are driving cities and New York is a walking and subway city. So New Yorkers have to deal with the impacts of crime. Progressives actually have to live up to the idiotic policies that they advocate for. This is what leads to situations like homeless people being sheltered in a hotel in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Manhattan, which is right near a school, which is a problem because a lot of these people that were being housed by New York City right by the school happen to be on that very special registry for criminals who commit those very special crimes in relation to children. Now, it's one thing to read reports and hear on the media about how bad New York City has gotten under Mayor Bill de Blasio, specifically after the Defund the Police movement took hold in this country, but it's another thing to actually live through it. Because recently, I was in parts of New York City that I don't normally go to because, nice restaurants, etc., because I was showing guests around New York City. And I would take them to nice areas because I don't want them to see the filth and the litter that is prevalent in New York City in certain spaces. However, I haven't really been somebody who's been going through Manhattan since I was in university when I used to commute to school. So when I would take people to nice places, or what used to be nice places within my lifetime in New York City, and they'd be absolutely dirty and disgusting, I would feel embarrassed. So I know other New Yorkers are in that camp. They feel the embarrassment of how much the city has decayed under the de Blasio administration. So we had a stark and clear choice. Were we going to go towards somebody like Bill de Blasio, somebody who literally worked for Bill de Blasio, somebody who has no honor, no integrity, somebody who doesn't want to live amongst their own policies but thinks it's virtuous to advocate for them? Or were we going to go in another direction? Were we going to elect somebody who acknowledges that there is crime and that crime is a problem that needs to be dealt with and it is the #1 priority? Somebody who's not going to talk about how we need to invest and go arrest poverty because poverty is driving crime, when we know the exact opposite is true. Crime drives poverty because people don't want to invest in areas where there's shootings and all kinds of chaos going around. And the results are in, not just from the initial vote, which Eric Adams took a solid 31% to Maya Wiley second at around 22%, but the final tally, which put Eric Adams in first and Catherine Garcia in second. The New York people have voted for the tough on crime guy, and it is unambiguous who did it.
Eric Adams is feeling the Maya-mentum, and let me just say...
But setting all the politics and the policy aside, the fact that Maya Wiley used the term Maya-mentum should make New York State and the United States of America, honestly, bring back the punishment of banishment. Yes, I am in favor of banishment. Put this woman on a raft and float her out into the Atlantic, let her fend her own way. Maybe the Maya-mentum will take her to somewhere safe. But it's one thing to talk about how Eric Adams won and how this is a bit of a reprieve for New York City. Again, not getting my hopes up because it is a Democrat being elected to the mayoralship, so all of it is going to be determined on how he performs in that role. But at least we have a reprieve in that we elected the less like a progressive that we could have possibly done in this Democratic primary process. And for those of you who are like, well, the Republican might have a chance of winning, listen, unless the Republican has a lot of money or crime is significantly worse, the chances of a Republican taking this mayoral election are just not that high. So we have to look at the best possible Democrat for this scenario. But what I want to go into is who actually voted for which candidates, because I think this is incredibly intuitive in terms of what I've been talking about this whole time, about how people who have to live with the consequences of crime, at least in this city, actually vote based on this. And by the way, this is not only applicable to this city. One of the most interesting things I found while reading the campaign book, Lucky, How Joe Biden Won the Presidency, is that the thing that moved Latinos into the camp of Donald Trump more than anything else was the fact that there was rioting. And this is because typically Latin communities live near Black communities, and this is where we saw major crime spikes across the country. And since these people had to deal with the consequences of those spikes in crime, of the riots, of the looting, etc., they flipped Republican in greater numbers more quickly than we've almost ever seen. Now, I know George Bush got 45% of the Hispanic vote in the Kerry election, but we're talking about the swing from one election to another. So Catherine Garcia, who is endorsed by the New York Times and is a native of the affluent Park Slope area, who said that she may be opposed defunding the police when it was convenient with her, but never spoke up and said it out loud, actually received about 40% of the first choice votes in affluent areas, and less than 10% in most other areas. So Catherine Garcia, the woman who almost won, the woman who almost eked out a comeback against Eric Adams due to the ranked choice voting system, got most of her support from wealthy areas, particularly in Manhattan, and less than 10% of the first place votes from any other area in New York City. Next up on our list is the progressive lion, the woman of color, the Black woman, the ultra-progressive, the I have a black godson, Maya Wiley. Now, Wiley won 22% of the first choice votes and carried no assembly districts in Manhattan or the Bronx, and none with large Black percentages. She did carry 5 assembly districts in Queens and 5 in Brooklyn, all in the various stages of gentrification. So Maya Wiley, the champion of progressives, the person endorsed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is basically the greatest hipster candidate of all time. This woman who runs her campaign on being against gentrification is the candidate of the gentrifiers, of the hipsters. Absolutely amazing. But what's even more amazing is who actually voted for Eric Adams. Because it turns out that Eric Adams, he was propelled to victory by getting about 45 to 75% of the vote of the heavily minority areas. And by heavily minority, I mean Black or Hispanic areas. So Adams, the tough on crime, bring back the anti-crime unit, bring back stop and frisk candidate, did the best among the people that defund the police is allegedly supposed to appeal to most. Because defund the police has always been a slogan championed by rich white progressives and young stupid people. And this election proves that. It proves once and for all, at least for New York City, that the people who actually have to deal with crime know that it is a way bigger problem than police brutality or unarmed Black people being shot by the police. And the absolute irony of the gentrifying hipsters being the biggest constituents for defund the police, when these are the very people who would not live in the areas that they live in if not for the hard work and discipline of the NYPD, driving the crime rate down there, making those places desirable to live in, is absolutely palpable. These people are voting to actually destroy the communities that they live in when they think that gentrification, them living there, is what's destroying the communities. Ironic that it actually became true, that the effects, the hard work of the NYPD and reducing crime in this city actually is creating people more tolerant to that crime because they never experienced it in the first place, because they moved to the nice areas that are only nice because of the police department. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about the New York City mayoral race. Till next time.